Okay, what is a 10x relationship and how can you be a 10x partner? Well, 10x thinking is a thought process that aims to transcend normal paradigms, normal approaches by aiming for a 10 times better relationship than you've ever had before. Now, the breakthrough in this thinking is that when you aim for 10 times better, you can't just make small, efficient, incremental improvements. You've got to think about relationship from the ground up. If you want to make a new service in a business 10 times better, you can't just make the windows in a car go up and down slightly faster or slightly nicer coloring. You've got to think about the entire concept of transportation. So, if we think about relationships and we build it up from the ground up, the first level is the paradigm. And what most people are thinking of, and I'm going to use the US culture as a backdrop, is that if you're a woman, your ideal man is going to make you safe, is going to be strong, is going to reassure you, is going to be handsome, is going to be 100% loyal to you, is going to make you look great, is going to support your goals and career, is going to let you be the person you want to be and provide a safe backdrop so that you've got something to fall back on. Is going to give you some space to experiment, but is going to be there for you. And I think this epitomizes, a popular, strong, confident, worldly, handsome, wealthy male that is going to, through association, make you look good whether you accomplish something or not, but that is also going to give you a chance to grow. I think 80-90% of the women in the US, particularly a younger woman, will aspire to something like that. Now, the flip side is the counter. If you've got a father who's all of those things, then the primary goal may be to rebel or find the counterpoint by hanging out with a hobo and the poor and whatever, and and establish that position as well. But typically, that will be the predominant goal. Now, if you're a man, you want someone who's smart but not smarter than you. You want someone with a gorgeous body, someone who's going to make other men and women feel that you must be important, that you've got such a person. Someone that's very sexual, someone who is emotional, who doesn't make you feel foolish, who you can open up and explore with, who makes you look cool, and who you can perhaps have a more quiet relationship with. Now, whatever the view is, if we build a 10x relationship up from the bottom and we start with the paradigm within what we're just talking about is someone who is a sex object, a stimulant, someone who makes you look good, someone that brings a certain amount of safety and, I guess, looking good, because one of the reasons we want wealth and security in a capitalist framework is we want to look good. And in a capitalist framework, people who don't make money or don't have a lot of money don't look good as a traditional stereotype. Now, this is fine as a pleasure and survival paradigm, meaning there's no doubt at all that if you're scared and uncertain, if you don't have a strong sense of self-value, that having all these attributes that make you look good is a wonderful way of gaining a sense of security through social ranking. And there is an enormous amount of drive within professional careers, etc., to gain rank through partnering, through having the right kind of partner, because you have a lot of ranking if you've captured, so to speak, the ideal partner in the view of the culture. And that's it. It's within the view of the culture. And it's very important to understand how thick the culture is in this game, because, in some of the African tribes, the ideal woman has the biggest plate in her lips. Now, there's no objective reason to marry a woman who has a bigger plate in her lip. In all practical terms, this is a liability. It's not like this plate is used for eating. It's not like if the woman falls over, she won't increase the risk of accident by having a bigger plate. It's not like if she could manage to have a 1-foot plate in her, in her torn lip, that it wouldn't be a big liability not to bump into her, let alone kiss. So this is not a technical asset. It is a cultural asset. And to understand how thick this cultural asset is, you just need to look at the details of some of the 10,000 cultures in human history. And you go back to the Renaissance period in time where you were more sexy if you were what was then called voluptuous, what would now be called fat. So go to the Renaissance, the attractive woman is fat. You go to the present day, the attractive woman is thin. At least the models in vogue, courtesy of the desire to save fabric for the fashion designers, who, when they're sending their line out of clothes, there's an enormous benefit in having very skinny models because they don't have to buy so much fabric. And so Vogue, setting the tone for the fashion industry, sets the tone for skinny women that are anorexic in their contracts. So they actually, women models have contracts that say how big they can be, because if a fashion designer is going to make 100 outfits for that model, they don't want to make 100 outfits a few inches bigger because they want to save fabric. So we see the absurdities. So, who knows where the plate dynamic came out for women who put plates in their lips, or what about the degree the ear hangs down and has various ornamentation, or in our modern cult, or Gothic culture, it's how many tattoos, how many piercings you have, how much spike you have in your hair. These are very arbitrary things that have nothing to do with technicality, and they have very much to do with, I see it in architecture, where, for example, in the United States, there's a big emphasis on new. And so if you want to sell a product in the United States, as almost every company does, new and improved, modern, contemporary, is an obsession that is as irrational as the bigger the plate, right? Because whoever came up with the idea of cutting one's lip and putting a plate in the first place, who knows where that came from. But, once something catches on in a cult, and we're dealing with cult behavior whenever we deal with culture, once things catch on in a cult, okay, we're doing plates. I've got a bigger plate. Bigger is better in the chauvinism. In the chauvinism of masculine energy. I've got a bigger one. I've got a better one. No, you've got a 2-inch plate. I've got a 3-inch plate. So you have the women parading back and forth with their plates. Well, in architecture, within that chauvinism of masculine energy, something that is new and disruptive is a little bit more masculine than something that is traditional and embracing. You are contained within the circle of your history. This is an ancestral, you are cocooned by your ancestors, this traditional element. Well, that's feminine. I don't want to be cocooned with this and that. I want to be me. I want to be new. I want to be different. So this is masculine energy, something our Western culture obsesses about. And so all you have to do to insult someone in a chauvinistic culture is tell them that that's old-fashioned. Now, you don't have to explain, because this is the gap between science and cultish behavior. Cultish behavior is self-referencing. So you don't have to explain why spending a lot of time, money, and energy to make something new is better than not spending a lot of time, money, and energy to deal with something that's perfectly acceptable that's old. For example, all across America, there are people that took perfectly working refrigerators and got rid of them so that they could buy new perfectly working refrigerators that had stainless steel doors to them. And they didn't have to say anything. Oh, you haven't gotten a contemporary fridge right. You've still got one of those old, you don't even have to say anything because it's sub-logic. Cults are sub-logic. And new and improved, once you build that into a cult assumption, now all you have to do to get social ranking within the cult is to have stainless steel. Now screw the fact that you've just wasted your college funds. Screw the fact that you don't have a retirement fund. Screw the fact that stainless steel is hard to clean in many cases. Screw the fact that it shows, spatters up more. Screw the fact that the other thing worked fine. Screw the fact that the other fridge goes into a landfill. We don't care about that. All we care about is the cult value, new and improved. Now, I dwell on this a little bit because you're not a scientifically intelligent person until you can differentiate yourself with the cult. The cult in culture is a self-referencing, irrational trait and habit that one develops. Who knows how it comes out? I mean, it's usually a deification process. When top hats came in London, I think it was in the 1800s, a royal figure decided to wear a top hat. Well, then it caught on. Why? Because of cult. See, cult-based behavior migrates. So the first cult is that royalty is better than non-royalty. Why? Well, if you go back to the essence of royalty, there was a sense that the kings of a culture, the seeds of a culture, were those that had transcendent visionary experiences. So Moses, had a burning bush and the commandments and this and kind of thing. And so that the descendants of Moses or the descendants of this religion or that religion, but a king in his archetypal form, a queen in her archetypal form, is someone that has a vision of the future of their culture, a future of their people. and serves as the servant and the guide of their people to realize that field. And there's some discussion in the ancient histories, whether it's certain drawings about, alien connection, flying machines in some of the ancient Hindu drawings that don't seem to make any sense except perhaps in, reference to a UFO phenomena. There's a sense that at some point in the history of humankind, there are beings that in some way, on either in a transpersonal sense, through vision and meditation, through the psychedelic rituals that have permeated almost all of the major religions. You just only need to kind of look at the study of culture and religion. You look at China, for example, and it makes sense when you take opium. You look at, 60s culture, and it makes sense when you take psychedelics. You look at certain aspects of Mexican culture, and it makes sense when you take peyote. In other words, there's a visionary aspect. There is a mediation where at some point the figures in our religious history, in our cultural history, had an epiphany. Muhammad went off and wrote the Quran. So these people originally, of course, there had to be a first king. And the king was the one that saw more than the normal people, that had a teaching that brought wealth and abundance to the people. One of the last beautiful kings, that we find who recently died, was the elder king in Thailand. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name, but he was loved by his people because he brought water, he brought prestige, he brought wealth, he brought courtesy with other countries. This king brought an enormous amount of well-being to the Thai people and was and is revered. It's an incredible insult in Thailand to insult the older king, because the king had a place to play, had a role to play in the development of the people. So from this, then, there's the sense of the lineage, that the pattern, that once you have a pattern, like the original gold, platinum, recording, and then there's the awareness that as that recording is replicated, slowly the pattern deteriorates over time. And you need to go back to the original, or you need to have a new vision. So you have this phenomena where there have been times in history where the leadership that emerges, the royal family, the king and the queen, sees something that nobody else sees, first of all, and then brings a gift, a wealth to the people that is otherwise not there. And finally, through this habit, royalty starts becoming valuable because of the name. And this is the interesting thing in Christianity, where they talk about the false calf, the golden calf, the symbol that gets replaced with the original thing. And this is always an interesting phenomena in human history, where you have an innate value. For example, you have a human being who has a vision for their people. Medicine men in the Native American culture, great medicine men who, would go to the top of the mountain and meditate and fast and, mediate through the spirit plants, and would have a vision. And they would come down from the mountain, and the tribe would gather around them, and they would share what they saw in the vision. And the tribe had an instinctual understanding that this was a great vision, this was an okay vision, this was an important vision to respect, and that the vision maker The vision receiver was an honored role in the cult, an honored role in the culture, because when you follow a good vision, the culture grows, the culture improves. When you follow a beautiful vision, the culture grows and improves. So at that point, it is not a cult. It is intelligence. Meaning intelligence is that which brings about more well-being per unit of energy invested than the status quo. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that if a guy walks up to you finishing some poached eggs here. If a guy walks up to you and says, I've got an idea, and, okay, what is it? And they lay out an idea. And it looks like that idea will make you 3 times happier with the same amount of money, with the same amount of debt. If you say, nah, I'd rather be miserable, that's not intelligent. And we do that all the time, but it's not intelligent. So intelligence embraces the ideas, the people, the patterns, and possibilities that bring about well-being more efficiently than the status quo. Now, why more efficiently? Well, if you can buy an iPhone for $500 and the exact same iPhone for $1,000, where's the intelligence in spending $1,000 rather than $500? It doesn't make any sense. And so we would call that person a fool. But we do it in cults all the time. In cults, there are many ways to achieve a goal. And what makes something a cult is we stop analyzing the underlying logic and we just focus on the fact that that's the way everyone sees it. The emperor has no clothes phenomena. So going back to the top hat, there was a time in certain lineages when the king, when the queen was what brought the goodness to the people. Now, for the majority of people, it's always hard to understand the underlying logic. And so there's a great temptation to replace the substance with the symbol. So, for example, you've had a great king. The Thais had a magnificent king. And now the lineage passes to his son. But the son is nothing like the father. The son is interested in sex and money and power and in looking good. One of his first acts is to change all the money in the country to have his face on the figure, on the money. Doesn't help people's people. It takes the people's money to pull in currency and replace it with new money. Who does it help? It helps the vanity of the king. It doesn't help the country. So why has the son inherited the kingdom when the son can demonstrate no capacity to bring the country to a more sophisticated and beautiful place, to generate more well-being? Well, it's become part of the cult. The cult is, well, that's what we do, because we don't want to take on the effort of scouring the country to find who is the visionary person, because then we'd all have to learn to think. We'd have to develop a metric of intelligence. We'd have to relearn what it was to be a king. We'd have to evaluate people based on a lot of data. For example, if there's someone in the country that has done all of this stuff that has helped people, we might then have to compare them with someone else who'd helped all these other people in this different way. And we'd have to have a conversation in the country around, what is really the most important thing? Is it looking good, etc.? And so it becomes more cultish. So some idiot comes up with the idea of an uncomfortable hat that bangs in almost every door, except it doesn't bang in the palace doors, right? Because the palace doors, the castle doors, the cathedral doors are high, because that's part of the architecture that impresses people. Is everything is on a giant scale, in part so that the people feel very small going to those architectural spaces. And so the top hats work in the palace and make you feel even more important. You see how high I am? It's like, well, and you look at where that comes from. Well, we have in our very chauvinistic bias, tall is better than short. Why? Not for short doors. Look at Alice in Wonderland. She couldn't get in the door till she got short enough. But tall is better than short. That's chauvinistic. Big is better than small. That's chauvinistic. That's all saying masculine energy is better than feminine energy. So we have these high hats that don't fit in any place but the palace and the palace cabs. But now the people want to copy royalty because royalty is good. Why? Doesn't matter. It just is, So that's when it becomes cultish. So everyone gets a top hat. And it creates an enormous amount of expense and irritation for an entire country for years. Having to remove the hat, banging on the top of the doors, having to remove it in the cab, in the carriages, polishing the top hat, It's an incredible irritation, storing the top hat when you come home at night, polishing. It's a complete joke. But that's the way we've got to do it, And so this is the cult dynamic. Now, if you want a fabulous relationship, you've got to get rid of the cult dynamic. You've got to sort out what's healthy and intelligent that underlay the original cultish behavior, if anything, and see if there's something there for you. And then you've got to come back and, assess if there's any better design that you can come up with. Now, this is intelligence. This is individual. This is personality. And so the paradigm of, the suave, gorgeous lover, the luxury lover, you have that kind of dream and fantasy. You have the future, you have looking good, what's good for your career, these types of things. And these are fine to some extent. But they're very rarely going to lead to a 10x relationship. Because none of these have anything to do with your soul, with who you are as an individual. And the first thing to transcend within a cult, in this case a scientific, reductionalist, rationalistic, chauvinistic, capitalistic, materialistic cult, that is our Western culture, is to reignite an awareness of our soul, an awareness of who we are as an individual, who we are as a being. To reignite that, to get a sense of that, and to start creating a womb, an environment, a place for that part of who we are to express ourselves. And when we set the paradigm of a 10x relationship to be the discovery, the blossoming, the awakening of our soul and spirit, and the development of ourselves as human beings, and gifts, our unique talents, and that a relationship, A 10x relationship is an environment, is a womb in which that development can occur. The development of something that is so unconscious in Western cult that most have no connection between the words and a felt experience. There's no connection. It's buried so deep that the words have no meaning. They might have an echo of a feeling. See, now we're looking at a blessing, a relationship that blesses the unique soul and spirit, the unique energy of you, of I, of a partner. This is a completely new paradigm that leads to completely different questions. And every question is a quest. And the questions we ask determine the quests that we go on, that we enter. And the quests that we go on determine the places we arrive. And so a 10x relationship, beginning with the quest, how might I design a relationship from day one that would be 10 times more valuable, more filled with an abundance of what matters, what is valuable, begins with the question. That quest begins with the question. And we first have to start grappling with this fundamental architecture, the frame. You see? This quest here begins with this frame. You see? Disappear. I'm outside the frame. I'm outside the frame. The frame is the first place to look in any dynamic. The frame is the first place to look because outside of the frame, nothing exists within the rationalist, reductionist paradigm that we're operating in, which is the paradigm of the senses. If you can't see it, if you can't smell it, it doesn't exist. So you have to create a frame, the paradigm. You have to create a paradigm that can track, that brings something into focus, that you can follow all the way to the end. I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at the next step, the next part of this journey of a 10x relationship and becoming a 10x partner. We talked briefly about what it means to begin the quest of a 10x relationship. And one of the questions is, what does it mean to be a 10x partner? Well, a 10x partner is someone that accelerates the probability field of a 10x relationship. A 10x partner is someone who helps create an environment in which 10x relationships occur. Think of it as a gardener that prepares the soil in such a way that 10x seeds grow, or that, more accurately, normal seeds germinate 10 times more fruitfully and grow 10 times more successfully. So, what is that kind of environment? Well, obviously, competence is a really big part of that, and competence is the masculine expression of a 10x partner. Now, what kind of areas Does a 10x partner need competency? Well, you can think about that and be aware that this is a living question. It's a living space. But one of the tools, one of the beginnings, one of the ways to move closer to being a 10x partner is to be able to see. See what? To see the capacity. To see the capacity in the other. Their ability. Their gifts. To see the capacity in the other, the potential in the other, to bring something unique from the world of other, the world of soul, of spirit, of other, into this world. Now, what is it? Plato talked about beauty, truth, and goodness as being the essential pillars to seek. So what is it unique in a partner that is beautiful, that is true, that is good? What is it that is unique? The ability to see that begins because all vision is 360, right? You see, we don't have the kinds of observing and measuring devices. If we think of a thermometer, you put a thermometer in this room, it measures 58 degrees. You take it to another country, it measures minus 40. You take it to another place, it measures 72. They don't make thermometers that can only measure 52 degrees, or it's not a useful thermometer. And lenses of perception, be it a thermometer, be it a microscope, be it a telescope. You see, a telescope, if you look this way, magnifies what's out this way. If you look this way, it magnifies what's out this way. If you look up, it magnifies what's up. A telescope does not only magnify what's pointing this way. It's a tool that magnifies whatever is focused on. And what I'm getting at is you can't see another person's gifts if you lack the ability, the same observing and measuring device, to see your own gifts. Nassim Taleb, if I'm not mistaken with his name pronunciation, in The Black Swan, talks about the various levels of competency in our culture, in our world. And one of the, things that he illustrates that can bring some light onto some of the absurdity that goes on in our world is he illustrates examples of how it takes someone competent in psychology or in science to know if someone is competent in psychology or science. In other words, if you are not competent in a given area, then you don't have the skill to tell if someone else is or is not competent, because it's the same lens. If you don't have that lens, then you don't know if you're competent. And so you can't tell if somebody else is competent. And the phenomena of heuristics is such that what we do in lieu of being able to do something or perceive something directly is we create a symbol. For example, people used to exchange chickens, and then they exchanged shells, and then they exchanged gold pieces instead of chickens. It's not that they wanted to eat gold, it's just gold was easier to carry than a chicken. And then they exchanged notes to be able to drop a pile of gold here, get a note, and then take it across the ocean and receive a similar pile of gold on the other side based on the symbol of that gold, the note. And then they just started making notes for no particular reason. And so there's always a damage or a threat that the symbol that is a shortcut becomes the substitute for the underlying substance. I remember going to a school in my teens. It was called Phoenix, nice word, death and rebirth. Phoenix International, grandiose, right? School for Peace and Ecology. I got there. It was a one-guy operation ranching goats, using the kids to help ranch goats. And they threw all their garbage in a pile in the wood and burned it from time to time. That was Phoenix International School for Peace and Ecology. Now, it takes effort to drive out to a school and learn this. And my father and I didn't spend that effort. We looked at the brochure. The brochure is a symbol, the name is a symbol for the school, and it's designed to make it easy for you, right? Words are a symbol. When you say, I love you, it's a symbol for the hard work involved in helping someone feel loved. So it's important to be mindful of this dance here between a symbol, between a word, between a heuristic, a shortcut, a guide that, they make guides for lying. For example, if he looks down, that's a tell, right? He's not telling the truth. Well, that's a shortcut. Because some people look down because they were abused as a child, and they're very honest. And some people look down because they're telling a lie and they feel bad about it. But you'd actually have to take some time to get to know those people in order to know whether the shortcut applied or not. And so to see one's gifts, to see another person's gifts, you have to see your own gifts. And to see your own gifts, it's not just looking in a little astrology short, this and that and the other. It's taking the time and learning about who one is as a being, about what brings life and vitality as a being. It's a process. It's a process of learning, of patient time, of looking in detail, of following both the dark and the light because they tie together. The thing that makes you the most furious, the thing that elicits the most hatred, is also the thing that elicits the most joy, that elicits the most sense of flow. So if you know what you hate, if you know what makes you feel the deepest pain, you can work with that to understand where the counterpoint is on the positive side of the spectrum. Because every relationship, for example, if you love honor, when your partner is honorable, you will love them. But similarly, when they betray, when they have no honor, you will loathe them with a similar intensity. The intensity set point is around the area. And then as someone relates to your set point, it goes into positive or negative terrain with the intensity of the charge that corresponds to your intensity of relationship with that domain, with the domain in this case of honor. So I feel passionately about honor. So I celebrate the honorable expression of this moment. And I weep, and I loathe, and I hate the betrayal of that same domain. You have the phenomena in romantic relationships of the passionate lover, hot-blooded, passionately devoted, and murderously enraged. That's a reality. And to see someone's gift and to respect someone's gift is to see their positive and negative potential, their constructive and destructive potential, and to support and champion them in moving towards their positive potential, towards the optimum expression in those areas that are most intense. There's the phenomena of the wounded healer, for example, where the pain marks and scars the arena of the soul out of which the flower, because it is the scarred earth that nurtures the seed, the dense, lush habitat, has little room for new life. The scarred earth, the burnt meadow, gives birth to new seeds. There is a connection between the areas we are scarred the deepest and the potential to bring the brightest gifts. There is a connection between our dark shadow and our light shadow. And to facilitate a 10x relationship, one needs to be able to see the gift, the possibility within a partner, and to be seen, and to see one's own gift. And to go knocking. To go knocking. To see. Can the conscious mind, that very limited domain, we have the whole self, the whole body, and then we have this little circle of the ego. And we're only conscious of what's inside the circle. Everything else is unconscious. 99.9% of all that is unconscious. It's outside of the frame of reference. It's unknown. So we go knocking to see if the ego inside that person is capable of grappling with the greatness of their gift, with the horror of their shadow. Because both expand simultaneously. When your eyesight improves, looking forward, you also see more crisply and more further in the rearview mirror. You can't control sight. Once you are willing to see, you start seeing more everywhere. It's often important to deal with the shadow sides, the tragedies, the betrayals, the griefs, the traumas. Because until we can cope and deal with those in a very real and personal way, we cannot cope and deal with our gifts and our magnificence. We've got to be able to wrestle with and come to terms with our traumas, with our shadow, with our grief. Let's take a moment and sit with this cauldron. It's a cauldron of energy. 10x relationships. The masculine is the words. The feminine is the feeling, the energy. The masculine is the decisions. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to read this book, and I'm going to study this, and I'm going to take notes. And the feminine is the blessing. It's the embrace, the joy, the anticipation of such a journey. Let's take a break and continue tomorrow on this exciting quest, a 10x relationship.